Safety is a big concern that a lot of would-be expats have. They want to make sure the place that they're moving is going to be safe. They're not going to have their head chopped off by a sword. Their kids aren't going to be kidnapped and thrown in the back of a van. Obviously, those things can happen pretty much anywhere in the world. And today I'm going to share with you the actual statistics of where you are most likely to be safe in the world, and they may surprise you. What I've always said is that people often use this dual standard when they're judging where they live now and where, for example, Nomad Capitalist suggests they should go. It's like, hey, I live in the United States, which according to the intentional homicide rate in 195 countries and territories around the world ranks 59th highest, i.e. about 2/3 of places have fewer murders per capita than the United States. So you're in the top third of places where you could be murdered. People say, well, hey, I live in Gilbert, Arizona. I live in Naperville, Illinois. I'm pretty safe here. And then they transpose that in the opposite direction where it's like, well, hey, if I lived in Mexico City, I would live in some despicable slum where everyone's coming after me. And that's, of course, not what would work. You would live in a place that is equivalent to Naperville, Illinois, or whatever safe place that you're used to. And so if it's your first time here, my name's Andrew Henderson. I'm the founder of Nomad Capitalist. We're a boutique consultancy that helps 7- and 8-figure entrepreneurs and investors legally go where you're treated best. That means lower taxes, diversified assets, second passports, more freedom, all using the power of international strategies. I'm also the host of the biggest and best offshore conference called Nomad Capitalist Live, and it's open to absolutely everyone to join. And so I wanted to go through, some of this data is a little bit older, some of these countries don't report as often, but this is a list of intentional homicide rates, and basically they break it down per capita, per 100,000 inhabitants, and they use some of the data. Some of this data is a little bit older. Some of this is from 2020, even 2021. Obviously, when you're measuring stuff on a global standard, it's hard to keep up, but I think this is relatively reflective of what I've seen. And so let's just kind of start at the bottom, and let's focus, because this is Nomad Capitalist, on more tax-friendly countries. People think, oh, if I want safety, I've got to move to Norway, I've got to move to Sweden, I've got to move to somewhere where I'm going to pay high taxes. Like, taxes is the price for civilization, right? So if I want to reduce my taxes, then that's not going to be the same place where I'm safe. And people kind of conflate, I can't go anywhere I'm safe. There's a couple things about that. First of all, there are countries like Switzerland, Ireland, Malta, Cyprus, where the headline tax rate may be higher than what you'll actually pay because there are certain incentives. There are countries like Panama, Malaysia, Thailand, where there's a system where money that's made offshore is protected. Singapore, also one of those. And so there are plenty of countries where you may think, oh, their taxes aren't that low, but they've got incentives. There are also countries like Italy, for example, where they've got a special deal for foreigners. And so there's plenty of places where you can go that you may not have thought were tax friendly that may offer more safety. So let's just start from the bottom. Number 195 out of 195, we've got San Marino, St. Helena. You're probably not going to those places. Monaco does come in. They had literally 0 murders in the last year we have data. So you're pretty good in Monaco, and obviously 0 income tax on the personal side there. That's a pretty substantial commitment. Isle of Man, also 0 murders in the last year reported, and that can be relatively friendly too. Channel Islands, 0 murders. And this data is pretty old. Maybe they had 1 murder at some point. I don't know. Islands like Jersey, for example, you can get a pretty good deal on your taxes there. If you are a 7- or 8-figure entrepreneur or investor, there's a good deal there. What's next? Singapore. We're just kind of going up the list of places that we would talk about for Nomad Capitalist. Singapore had like 10 murders in 2020, so that's 0.2 on the scale. And then we go to Luxembourg, not necessarily as tax-friendly for individuals, but Senegal, Oman. Okay, you can live in Oman, that's tax-free, but it's relatively more liberal than some of the places in the region. You're probably not going to Macau, Japan, probably harder to get into. Hong Kong, not in your list anymore. Qatar, not in the list anymore. So those are all the places. And then Indonesia, actually, 0.4. Those are the places that have fewer than half a murder for every 100,000 people. Now, if we go up, the U.S., 59th highest murder rate in the world, they came in 2020 at 6.3. So those countries have like 1/12 to 1 infinite as many murders as the United States. And if we kind of look up Canada, Canada's 2.0. Australia is like 2.6. New Zealand, for somehow those are lumped together in here. So we're well below kind of the Western standard. Obviously, the U.S. beating out those other Western countries, but we've already got places like Singapore, Monaco. Those are a little bit more expensive. Channel Islands a bit more expensive, but places where you can go and you can be pretty safe. Let's keep going up the list. A lot of people do like to go to Indonesia. People like to go to Bali. 0.4. You've got like 1/16, something like that number of murders as the United States. The UAE, that region, the Gulf region, pretty safe in general. Okay. Obviously a bit more socially conservative, although there are plenty of parts in Dubai that you could say that people are living their best life. And so they're at 0.5. You can go there, start a company, buy real estate, get a residence permit. You can go there, zero tax. And yes, even with a new 9% tax on companies that are onshore, you can still use other companies to keep your taxes at zero. Switzerland, lump sum tax program, also 0.5 murders. We go up, Slovenia, beautiful country. Italy, 0.5 murders per capita. They have not only a lump sum tax program, they've got a special retiree tax program. They've got special tax incentives depending on whether you live in the north or whether you live in the south. You get more juice in the south. You can extend those taxes out for well over a decade in some cases. You can get dramatic discounts. So again, if you are a 7 or 8 figure entrepreneur, those can especially be valuable to you. But if you're a freelancer, there are some benefits in places like Italy as well that could benefit you. We go up to China, we go up to Brunei, Bahrain, number 174. So now we're like out of the top 20. Bahrain still 0.5 murders. This data goes back to about 7 years ago, actually, but I've been to Bahrain. Feels incredibly safe. And they have not only a new golden visa program for real estate investors, but a real estate investors visa. You buy a property in one of the designated foreigner areas like SIF, you can get a residence permit and you can live there. They've got a great deal. Spain, certainly not safe in terms of going to Barcelona and not having your watch stolen, but certainly Spain in terms of this, much better. South Korea, one of the little talked about golden visas. They're at 0.6 murders. You can live there. People who've lived there said, hey, after a while you get frustrated, but if you want to live in Asia, you want that level of development that's not in Singapore, that's not in the tropical climate. South Korea gives you that with a more temperate climate. They're on par basically with Norway. They're right there, 0.6. Netherlands, Poland, Maldives, Ireland has tax incentives for foreigners, 0.7 murders. So you're basically at 1/3 the Canadian level, 1/8, 1/9 the US level. And you can reduce your taxes there. Czech Republic, Austria. So now we're getting a lot of these European Union countries. Taiwan, Hungary has tax incentives, relatively low taxes for certain situations. Greece, Germany, Tajikistan. Imagine Syria, by the way, with fewer murders in 2018, like 1/3 as many murders. Like when people are like, oh, if you don't like it in paying the taxes, just go to Syria. Okay, your 1/3 is likely to be murdered. Oh, they're just making up the statistics. We get it. There's always the next excuse for some people. Like, why? Listen, we get it. You want to stay in Canada, and you want to stay in Sheboygan. We got it. Like, if you want to stay, I'm not stopping you. But if you would like to consider leaving, and you're like, hey, I just want to know I'm not going to be killed. Well, even in Syria, probably not going to be killed. Portugal also 0.9. I don't know if that's good or bad. Like, we're tied with Syria. But there are fewer than 1 murder per 100,000 people in Portugal. And okay, actually, here is the number for Australia. They are at 0.9. So if you're in Australia, everything up until now was 0.9. They somehow got wrapped up with New Zealand, but they're at 0.9. So everything up until now, if you're Australian, that's safer. What's at 1.0? We talk about Serbia, for example, affordable place. You can get a residence permit. It's going to be more connected to your actually living there. Let's say you start a company. Let's say you buy some property. You are going to need to spend some time there, but if you want to live there, 1 murder. I've also seen other statistics in terms of other violent crimes, much lower in that part of the world, in the Balkans, than you'd find in Western Europe. I mean, the comparison between Serbia and some of the Balkan countries, even like Caucasus, like Georgia, much lower than countries like Spain, than countries like Sweden, much better in other crimes that weren't homicide. Jordan, Denmark, Croatia, Bulgaria, low flat taxes, not certainly the lowest you could pay, but if you like that very affordable cost of living, you can go to places like Bansko and get incredibly cheap ski chalets. You can live in the capital, and there's a lot to do in Bulgaria. Uzbekistan, Scotland, they broke it as its own country. A bunch of African countries. Okay, here's the UK at 1.2. So up until now, you'd be safer in any of those places than you would in the UK. For murder, I still think for other crimes, violent crimes, some of these countries, like Serbia, are dramatically better. And so you just kind of keep going along. Cyprus, 1.2, has a great tax incentive for foreigners, relatively good taxes to begin with out of the box on companies. We go up, okay, Vietnam, place a lot of people like to live in Southeast Asia, one of the cheapest places in the world to live. They're at 1.5. Malta has good tax incentives and an interesting residence and citizenship program. You can choose which one you want. They're at 1.6, so we're still safer than Canada. We pass countries like Belgium, Cambodia. We've talked about for investing. I never said to live there, but go and check it out. The worst thing I know is a guy had a phone stolen out of his hand by a motorbike. Armenia, 1.8, is tied. And there's Canada at 2, tied with basically Malaysia. They're at 2.1. Malaysia tax-friendly, has the MM2H program, has the LABA 1 tax savings program, so opportunities there. Georgia, we talk about, is at 2.2, potentially as little as 1% tax for many people, or potentially you can do even better. You can live there on a tourist visa for a year, for heaven's sakes. You see other countries. So Turkey, people, I'm afraid about Turkey. Okay, it's 2.6, a little bit less safe statistically in terms of homicides than Canada, but not that much different. Tied with Thailand, tax-friendly. A lot of people like going to Thailand. Investor visa, retiree visa, new different visa classes, Thai elite visa. Lots of ways you can live in Thailand and save money. Just came back from Thailand and felt pretty safe. Now we're at New Zealand. Here's New Zealand, 2.6. So tied with Thailand. If you're from New Zealand and you're paying a fortune and buying a house, buying a shack in an alleyway costs you $3 million, you can move to Thailand, have the same level of safety, dramatically reduce your taxes, get away from all the confiscatory politicians, or you could choose any of the other dozens of countries before that, but that's the level that you're at. We keep going up the list. Latvia has a golden visa program, not particularly low tax. Andorra, low tax, 2.6. Montenegro, we talk about, they're at 2.9. Mauritius, 2.9. Are you getting the point? Lots of, by the way, we're not even halfway to the United States at this point. We're still at under half the US murder rate. Gibraltar has a good tax incentive program. Estonia, overhyped, has relatively low taxes for, at least for businesses. Lithuania, the same, not for you, but for your business. Moldova, not particularly, the most exciting place to go. Philippines, not maybe the easiest to get into. Okay, now we're getting close to U.S. levels. 4.4 at the Philippines, right? Chile, 4.4. Obviously, that's a country that's going in the wrong direction. Sudan, still fewer murders. Argentina, we're getting close. Turks and Caicos, a place we don't talk about that often, but does offer great tax policies, offers a residence permit for real estate investors, offers more of that kind of British vibe in the Caribbean. If you want something a bit more upscale, like the Cayman Islands, it's a good alternative to that. You go through some of the other islands. Okay, Ukraine, this is old. And now Bolivia, and then the United States. So, 59th most dangerous country. Where are you more likely to be murdered if you are an American in other countries? Paraguay, just barely. Afghanistan, again, just barely, but these are numbers, okay, from 2018. Nicaragua, we're at 7.2. Russia, Ecuador, Cayman Islands, actually, and British Virgin Islands, you are more likely. I know plenty of people who live in the Cayman Islands. I don't really think they go around worried about being shot. I do think it's pretty safe there, but maybe they had a bad year and it's a little bit old. Barbados has a good tax program, 9.8 versus 6.3 in the U.S., so certainly higher. Grenada has a citizenship by investment program. Panama, good tax incentives. Okay, now we're getting up into the double digits. 11. Antigua, 11, has a good citizenship program. Perhaps the least efficient of all of them right now. But it is a tax-free place to live. Uruguay, I honestly, having been in Uruguay, I don't know. I thought the killers would be bored to tears. They would just kind of fall asleep while they're on the hunt, and they would just fall asleep from the total lack of things to do. Seychelles, okay, you're not moving there. Puerto Rico, okay, you want to talk about, I don't want to leave the U.S., I'm going to move to Puerto Rico. 18.5, 3 times the murder rate as the U.S. Again, if you're living in the nicest areas, if you're living in Dorado, I think you're probably fine. So let's not take the whole island. Let's take where you would live. Dorado's expensive. As much as Dubai prices have gone up in the last year, like about 60%. Prices in Puerto Rico since Joe Biden was elected have been going nuts. And so you're going to pay for the privilege of being in the safe part of the island. So you have all the Caribbean citizenship by investment islands here, which are less safe. Again, there are nice areas to go. So you see Dominica, you see St. Lucia, you see Guatemala. Here's Colombia, 22.6. I have a home in Colombia. I spend time there. I walk around. I have seen incidents of violence, not with my own eyes, but I have seen it. Mostly not in my neighborhood, but I have seen and heard about it. And no doubt you've got to be more careful there. That said, I think that it's an issue of living in the right neighborhoods, taking the right precautions. It is a bit more adventurous there, no doubt. But that doesn't mean that you couldn't buy property there and get a good return, get a residence permit in the process. Maybe you just commit to a couple days per year. You can probably manage that, right? Belize, 25.7. higher than Colombia. Anguilla, another good tax-friendly island that has the British vibe in the Caribbean. Mexico, 28.4. No doubt there are issues in Mexico. Does that mean it's going to affect you in Lomas in Mexico City or in Merida or in Los Cabos? Probably not. You do want to keep your wits about you there, but I think there are certainly places in Mexico where you can go and be safe. So Mexico, 12th most dangerous. The top 10, you got the U.S. Virgin Islands, still the U.S., Jamaica, Lesotho, El Salvador, Venezuela, St. Vincent and the Grenadines, the one Eastern Caribbean state with no citizenship program. Honduras has some interesting options. St. Kitts and Nevis, which had kind of a bad couple of years. I don't know that that's going to actually, with this old data, be the case anymore. Nigeria and South Africa. Most of those countries you wouldn't move to. And so even if you got a St. Kitts and Nevis passport, even if you got an Antigua passport, and those are tax-free countries, the tax-free part is a nice reassurance that they're not going to, they've had an extra step. They're not even taxing their residents, let alone they're never going to tax citizens, I don't think. But the idea being, you can live with that passport anywhere else. And I think people should understand that you can get a passport in a country and not live there. But if you want to find a place to live, you see there aren't that many countries, including most of the tax-friendly countries, that are more dangerous than the United States. So if you're an American, you've got a lot of options where you can go and you can know that you and your family are safe. And I encourage you to look at the actual statistics rather than defending one country and the fact that you're anecdotally safe because of your chosen lifestyle versus the fact that that same chosen lifestyle would probably keep you equally safe, if not more safe statistically, in another country where you are treated best.